Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we're doing another news review here, discussing a couple of big things, including a lot of big signings that have happened over the past couple of days, a couple of injury updates, waiver updates. We've got some more updates here, just going over a couple of things that have been talked about the 2018 World Junior team and the Utah wanting an NHL team. Plus, we got some more trade rumors involving the Buffalo Sabres, Dallas Stars, Vancouver Canucks, and Columbus Blue Jackets. So I'll go through all of that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Talk channel. Before we begin this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I would never be able to do this without you guys. So don't forget to subscribe so we can reach 50 subscribers, and leave a comment down in the comment section below discussing all that happened in today's video. Now, as usual, I'm going to start off today by discussing a couple of signings from the past couple of days. We have 4 signings yesterday, a ton of interesting signings, so let's do all of those signings here. First, we'll start with the lower end of the signings. The Nashville Predators have re-signed defenseman Kevin Gravel to a 2-year contract extension with the AV of $775,000, and it'll begin at the start of next year. Not too surprising there. Gravel's a decent AHL defenseman at this point in time. He's not a regular NHL defenseman. He can be called up upon if need be. He's been in the Nashville organization this year and last year. Last year, he had 1 assist in 23 NHL games, and also had 13 points in 49 AHL games. So far this year, has 6 points in 37 AHL games, so he hasn't gone into any NHL action as of right now, but he does seem like he has a decent chance that he could be easily a call-up option, so not overly surprised they signed him. It's definitely an interesting signing for the Nashville Predators. Don't think it's overly surprising that they were signing a depth defenseman, but it's not someone who you would usually see as a very fantastic NHL defenseman. So they signed Gravel, 2-year league minimum deal. Don't think it'll be overly huge, and it's a pretty decent signing for the Predators. League minimum for an AHL player, not too surprised, and I think Gravel will still remain a really good player for the Nashville Predators. Then we saw the Colorado Avalanche sign someone who we all thought were going to New York Islanders, and Zach Parise. Over the past week, I think, week and a half, there have been a lot of talk about Parise being signed to a couple of teams. There was a lot of teams interested in him, and the Colorado Avalanche were one of those teams, and they did indeed sign him. The Avalanche have signed Zach Parise to a 1-year contract with the AV of $825,000. So it's just a contract for the rest of this year. It's not an overly long-term contract. There was a lot of talk that Parise wanted to come back and get back into game action in the NHL, and he does wind up doing so. The last 2 years he spent with the New York Islanders, he put up 15 goals and 35 points 2 years ago, and he put up 21 goals and 34 points last year. So he's definitely coming off a really good season, putting up over 20 goals. He can definitely be a solid depth add for the Colorado Avalanche. He can be a solid, something like a 3rd or 4th line forward for the Avalanche. Not sure if he'd be exactly a 3rd line forward on a healthy Avalanche team. He can at least be a solid 4th line forward. And given all the time he's taken off, he could probably be a consistent 4th line forward. You could also see him be a spare at some points, given his age, but I also think he'll be a fantastic 4th line addition there for the Colorado Avalanche. As he showed last year, he can score even in a reduced role. I think he'll be a fantastic add for the Colorado Avalanche. We know they signed Thomas Tatar to be a solid bottom 6 forward. That never worked out. They moved him to Seattle, so maybe this is sort of like the Thomas Tatar replacement. Hopefully he can work out really well in a bottom 6 role, but they also have Chichkins in the NHLPA Players Assistant Program right now. Landeskog is injured, so they do have a couple of holes in the forward group. So adding a depth forward like that to their roster is a very fantastic addition there for the Colorado Avalanche. So it's not a huge addition, but it's a solid bottom 6 forward. Parise should definitely help in the bottom 6, and if he can produce anything close to what he did last year, he should be a fantastic bottom 6 forward to put up at least 10 to 15 goals for the Colorado Avalanche this year. So this is a very fantastic signing there for the Avalanche. And then we saw 2 contract extensions for the Philadelphia Flyers. They signed Ryan Poehling, who signed the offseason, to a 2-year contract extension with the AV of $1.9 million. And they signed Owen Tippett, who was a key piece in the Claude Giroux deal they made a couple of years ago, to a 8-year contract extension with the AV of $6.2 million. So we'll start with the Poehling edition. He has been bounced around over the past couple of years. He started his career off in Montreal, had a pretty good seasons there for a couple of years, was then dealt to Pittsburgh as part of the Mike Matheson deal. Didn't really fit in overly well in Pittsburgh, was a bottom 6 forward. Then when Kyle Dubas came in, they sort of changed up the bottom 6, so they let him go to free agency. He signed a 1-year contract with the Philadelphia Flyers, and they've really liked what he brought so far this year, so they signed him to a 2-year contract extension with the AV of $1.9 million. So it's not a huge upgrade from what they have him at right now. It's only a $500,000 cap increase, so it's not overly bad. Poehling's also a very good young forward, so I wouldn't be overly surprised that this is going to be a really good contract for them. So far, Poehling has had a really good season this year, putting up 5 goals, 9 assists, and 14 points, tying last year's point total with the Pittsburgh Penguins in 9 less games, only played 44 this year, so that's really good for Poehling. And on top of that, his career high is 17 points, so if he continues to play consistently decently in the NHL level on like a bomb six role, he should be able to pass his career high this year. He's a very good fourth line center. The Flyers have at times been using him with the guys like Delorier and Hathaway, which I think has been a really decent fourth line. At times he's also been higher up in the lineup, and I think he's a very good versatile forward. I think he'll definitely work extremely well with the Philadelphia Flyers long term. So it was a gamble taking him on after the Penguins let him go in the offseason, but it's worked out really well. They've liked his services, and Poehling's now signed a 2-year, $1.9 million AAV deal that'll keep him as the Flyers bomb six forward for the next 2 seasons. So it's really good to see Poehling get some stability. And then we saw Owen Tippett, who the Flyers have been wanting to sign over the past little while, get his extension. Tippett, who was the key piece in the Flyers and Florida Panthers trade for Claude Giroux, signs an 8-year contract extension with AAV of $6.2 million. Now, Tippett, former first-round pick back in the 2017 draft, he was drafted with a lot of potential. He did suffer some injury throughout his career. He hasn't had an overly fantastic career so far up to date, but he has had a couple of pretty good seasons. And I do think you can see that he has a future as like a solid top 6 winger. Last year was his best season on date, putting up 27 goals and 49 points in 77 games. So far this year already has 18 goals and 30 points in 46 games, so he's on pace to probably hit right around where he hit last year, if not a little bit better, maybe even a little bit better in the goal total. He's definitely produced really well as a top 6 forward for the Philadelphia Flyers, so it might have been a little bit of an overpayment given the fact he's only had one extremely good season, but I definitely think he could definitely grow into this. I think he's still young enough that in a couple of years' time this could look like a pretty good deal. So really good sign there for the Flyers, locking up Tippett for a long-term deal. It's good to see that they got him for an 8-year long period of time. It might have been a little bit of an overpayment, maybe somewhere close to $5.5 million instead of $6.2 million would have been an easier AAV for the Flyers, given the fact that Tippett doesn't have a long-term success. But he's definitely had a fantastic year this year. He looks like a fantastic top 6 goal scorer, and if he can continue to build off of last year, this should be a fantastic deal for the Flyers. So really good sign there for the Flyers to get one of their younger players locked up on a longer-term deal, and this should be a fantastic addition there for the Philadelphia Flyers long-term. Tippett's worked out really well. He's worked out fantastically last year. He's done a fantastic job this year. I think he should be a fantastic addition there for the Philadelphia Flyers long-term. So very good signings there for the Flyers to sign one of their bomb 6 forwards in Poehling to a 2-year contract extension, and then a top 6 forward who's turned to a really good goal scorer to an 8-year contract extension with an AAV of $6.2 million. So some really good contract extensions there from Philly. We also saw Parise go to Colorado, decent depth addition there for the Colorado Avalanche, and we saw the Nashville Predators extend Kevin Gravel. Not a huge signing there, but it's at least another depth defenseman the Predators will have for the next couple of years. So really good stuff there for those forward players. Those were signings that happened over the past couple of days. Going over to waiver updates from the past couple of days. Now, on Thursday, we were talking about the waiver updates and how Ruzicka and DeSimone were on waivers. We didn't know the outcome of those 2 players being placed on waivers by the Calgary Flames, and now we do. Both guys wound up being claimed. I didn't think DeSimone would probably be claimed. I thought he was probably going to get cleared. He's more, in my opinion, of a 7th defenseman, maybe a spare defenseman, someone who can definitely work as like a spare, not a regular NHL defenseman. But the Devils do have a couple of injuries. They have Hamilton, Siegenthaler. They do have a couple of injuries that they're trying to overcome right now, so they do need some defensive help. So the Devils acquire Nick DeSimone off of waivers, so not overly surprised there. I think for a short term, DeSimone could be a solid like 3rd pair defenseman with all of their injuries that they have right now. Long term, I think he'll probably go back on waivers when some of these guys get back, or they make a couple of trades for some upgrades. I would definitely think this is a good waiver claim for the Devils. DeSimone's shown he can be a really good 3rd pair defenseman so far this year for the Calgary Flames, and I think he should be a really good addition there for New Jersey, so that's a really good pickup. Then we also said that Adam Ruzicka, I thought he would probably get claimed. He's a good young bomb 6 forward, could definitely start to grow with another team. He definitely fell out of favor this year with Calgary, and I think it was a little bit of a risky move to place him on waivers, and I was right. Ruzicka did wind up getting claimed by the Arizona Coyotes, so it's not overly surprising that he got claimed. Like I say, he's a decent young bomb 6 forward who can definitely work, and I think has a long-term future of like a 3rd line forward, and an Arizona team that does have some question marks with some players who are going to be UFAs and they could possibly sell. I do think this is a very fantastic pickup there for the Coyotes. He should be a fantastic bomb 6 forward, and with some of these guys also out with injuries right now, that's a fantastic pickup for Arizona. So really good stuff there for Arizona to pick up Adam Ruzicka, who should be a fantastic addition there to their bomb 6. So those are a couple of really good waiver claims. So Arizona gets Ruzicka from Calgary, DeSimone goes to New Jersey from Calgary, and then we also had one more waiver placement that happened on Thursday, and that was New York Rangers Rangers forward Nick Bonino. That was a little bit of a surprising one. A lot of people were caught off guard by that. And Nick Bonino wind up clearing waivers. So I'm a little bit surprised by that. Beniers was a solid fourth line center. I am a little bit surprised that the Rangers placed him on waivers to begin with, but then I was also a little bit surprised they wound up being cleared. He's a solid fourth line center. I thought there might have been a team or two out there who have a little bit of forward needs and could definitely use some forward help. Like I said, solid fourth line center, could definitely help penalty kill wise. So the Rangers wound up clearing him. So he's going to remain in the Rangers organization over the next little while. So not overly surprised he wound up being cleared. He hasn't had the best of seasons this year, but he's still a solid fourth line center. And I thought someone could have taken a chance on him at least as like a 12th, 13th forward on their team. So I'm a little bit surprised Bonino cleared, but I do think that he's a little bit of an older forward, and some people might not have thought that he was an upgrade on what they have in their organization right now. So interesting stuff there, but Bonino's going to remain in the New York Rangers organization, and I expect that if they run into injuries or if they have a couple of players who are not doing overly well, then Bonino will definitely be an easy call-up option for the Rangers. But definitely, we know the Rangers have not had a great stretch over the past little while, trying to shake things up, and they placed Bonino on waivers. So that's an interesting placement there for the Rangers. He does wind up clearing. And then we also saw Ruzicka, who was placed on waivers by Flames, as well as Nick DeSimone, who was placed on waivers by Flames, be claimed off of waivers, and Ruzicka goes to Arizona, while DeSimone goes to New Jersey. So a couple of really interesting stuff there on the waiver updates from the past couple of days. And now going over to a quick couple of injury updates here from the past couple of days. We saw Ilya Lyubushkin have an upper body injury that's going to keep him out day to day. Hudson Fasching has a lower body injury. Adam Pelech has an upper body injury. Both are out for an unknown period of time for the New York Islanders. AJ Greer has an ankle injury for the Calgary Flames. He's going to be out for an unknown period of time. Bobby McMahon has an undisclosed injury out for an unknown period of time for the Maple Leafs. Jack Roslovic and Adam Boqvist have upper body injuries and are out for an unknown period of time, so that's really bad injury updates. Ryan Lindgren has an upper body injury and is out for an unknown period of time, so a bad injury update there for the Rangers. Kelly Yarncroke has a hand injury and is out for an unknown period of time. Henry Thrun has a shoulder injury and is out for an unknown period of time. Well, Zemgus Girgensson has an upper body injury and is out day to day, while Nick Cousins' concussion has been updated to only a day-to-day period of time, so really good stuff there for Nick Cousins. And then we also saw Ty Emberson be cleared to play by the San Jose Sharks, Samuel Savoy by the Chicago Blackhawks and promptly sent back down to the juniors, Pyotr Kochetkov by the Carolina Hurricanes, Matthew Beniers by the Seattle Kraken, Zach Werenski from the Columbus Blue Jackets, Husso from the Red Wings, and Heiskanen from the Stars. And those are all the guys who were able to be cleared to play to get back into game action. So really good stuff there for the Dallas to get Heiskanen back, Columbus to get Werenski back, Seattle to get Beniers back, Carolina to get Kochetkov back. Really good stuff there. But really bad stuff to see guys like Boqvist and Roslovic go down for Columbus, Pelech and Fasching go down for the Islanders, Lindgren go down for the Rangers. There was also a lot of talk that Philip Hedl suffered a major setback. That's probably going to keep him out the rest of the season for New York Rangers. So that's awful news for the Rangers too, to see Hedl, who was trying to work his way back after being out for a majority of the season this year, to get back into game action. So not great stuff there for the Rangers, and definitely a lot of bad injury updates there over the past little while. So it's going to be interesting to see who's able to come back in the next little while. Definitely a couple of really bad injury updates from the past few days. Next, going over to a couple more updates from the two situations we had talked about on Thursday. Now first, with the 22-year-old junior team, we know we talked about that on Thursday. There hasn't really been much updates there, and it doesn't look like we're going to get very much updates. According to the Insider Trading video, Pierre LeBrun said that the NHL declined to comment on anything that happened with the 22-year-old junior thing on both Wednesday and Thursday, and it sounds like they're not going to comment on anything until there's the London police report on February 5th. So it sounds like the NHL is probably not going to say anything until that point in time. So don't expect the NHL or NHLPA to say anything until around just after the All-Star break, when the London police is going to do their news release. And on top of that, Elliot Freeman was talking on the 32 Thoughts podcast and said that it's definitely not done yet. There's still a lot of things that need to be worked out for the London police thing, and don't jump to conclusions, don't jump to speculations. And he says that we'll probably get a lot more clarity once again on February 5th when the London police sort of release what they found out, and it sounds like they're probably going to start pressing charges on February 5th. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for, but don't expect any sort of news over the next week, probably until Monday to February 5th. That seems like a very good point at that point to see when things are going to start moving forward. But we got the news that the 5 players were asked to surrender, and that the London police were probably going to start pressing charges, and it sounds like that's probably going to happen around February 5th. So don't jump to any conclusion, but it's definitely going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. Not sure if those are the 5 guys or not, but Elliot Freeman did say that it's a really hard situation to figure out about, and he says we'll probably have some more clarity on that on February 5th when they release their statements and stuff and possibly press charges. So it'll be interesting to see there, but definitely some interesting stuff there. So it doesn't sound like the NHL and NHLPA are really inclined to talk about that right now until there's been some concrete evidence from the London police, and it doesn't sound like we will find out too much more about that situation until February 5th. So definitely an interesting date to watch out for. And on February 5th, we'll have to watch out and see what's going to happen exactly to those 5 players. But it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. And next, going over to the Utah stuff, there's been a lot of talk over the past little while about Utah getting an NHL team. Could it be via expansion, relocation? There's been a couple more reports about that from Elliot Friedman, 32 Thoughts podcast, and the Insider Trading video. So on the Insider Trading video, Pierre LeBrun was talking about it, and he said that the next Board of Governors meeting is June, which will probably be the next time they would bring up the stuff about expansion. But he did say a couple of other things, noting that Gary Bettman only needs to just call up the owners and ask if they are even willing to do anything before they bring this to a Board of Governors meeting. So there's a very likely possibility that this could happen a little bit earlier than June, and they could start trying to get this a little bit in motion earlier than June. So it's not a complete rule of a possibility that the expansion process could get its wheels rolling in the next couple of months. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. And he also said that the NHL would not be opposed to expanding one at a time and expand to just 33 teams, given the fact that the expansion fee will probably be between $1.5 and $2 billion. So it's definitely going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. It's definitely a really fascinating situation as well. If there's another team that's going to be interested. Elliot Friedman, when he was talking on the 32 Thoughts podcast, talking about the expansion, he said that this is sort of a move by the NHL to see exactly which sort of cities might be interested in an NHL team. It sounds like, according to Elliot Friedman, that this sort of statement here from the Utah team and then the NHL's follow-up statement makes it seem like they are trying to get a feel as to who's sort of really in this to try and get an NHL team. Jeff Merrick mentioned Atlanta. It seems like that's going to be a really interesting situation to watch out for as well. You know, Atlanta's building a new NHL arena. They have plans to bring an NHL team to Atlanta. We know Utah really wants a team, as they said in their statement. We know Houston's been linked there. KC's been linked at some points. Quebec's been linked at some points. I do wonder about other cities like Portland, Milwaukee, maybe a couple of other cities as well. So it'll be interesting to note what exactly could happen. But I definitely do expect there to be expansion at some points. And according to Elliot Friedman, he sort of gets the feeling that this is sort of a way of NHL saying exactly who is interested in possibly getting an NHL expansion team. And it seems like it's going to come at some point. And definitely, once again, it sounds like they're not opposed to going to 33 teams, even though it has an imbalance in the conferences, the divisions, and the league. So it's definitely an interesting situation to watch out for. And then on top of that, he also mentioned Arizona, both on the Insider Trading video and on the 32 Thoughts podcast. First, on the Insider Trading video, they were talking about Arizona, saying that the All-Star break was not a concrete timeline, and they may give the Arizona Coyotes a tiny bit more time, but they do need something in place by the time that the new schedule comes out. And they did point out to the fact that when the Atlanta Thrashers moved to Winnipeg, became the Winnipeg Jets, that happened in May 2011. So it's not a guarantee that'll happen right away if they were to relocate, but it's definitely going to be an interesting situation to watch out for and something that we're going to have to keep our eye on. On top of that, Elliot Friedman, when he was discussing this, said that the February timeline, when they were talking about this in December, he said that the Arizona Coyotes always get their timelines pushed back, but he didn't get too much pushback when he was asking if the Arizona Coyotes timeline for February was extremely concrete. And he says that while the Atlanta did move to Winnipeg in May, he said that the NHL is probably planning to do that for a couple of months before that. So there's a very likely possibility that if Arizona doesn't have their act together and they don't have a new arena by maybe sometime around February or March, my guess will be somewhere around maybe even as late as like the trade deadline or something, there's a very likely chance that even if there's nothing announced, that the NHL may be already planning a relocation to the Utah area. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. Utah's getting an NHL team. I think it's inevitable. It's a matter of time at this point in time. Whether it's a relocation by the Arizona Coyotes or in a couple of years' time via expansion, there's going to be a Utah team in the NHL. Definitely. At some point, it will definitely happen. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that down in the comment section. Should Utah get a team? Should it be Arizona? Should it be an expansion team? And if Utah were to get a team, what would you name the Utah team? Elliot Friedman also mentioned that if Utah was to get a team, they name it after a state, so they name it the Utah something, not Salt Lake. That's definitely interesting. And on top of that, what would you name a team in Utah? What would you name? In my opinion, I think I like the Utah Yeti, but I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on what a team name for Utah would be down in the comment section below. But that's all I'm going to talk about the Utah stuff. And then lastly, going over to a quick couple of trade rumors from the past couple of days. First, with the Buffalo Sabres. On 32 Thoughts podcast, Elliot Friedman was talking about Erik Johnson in Buffalo, saying that there's been a lot of talk over the past while that Erik Johnson may be a guy who gets moved by Buffalo Sabres. Now we know that Sabres not having an overly fantastic season. They're only 2 games below 500. They're still, I think, 9 points out of a playoff spot. It does not look good for them. They have to leapfrog a whole bunch of teams. So it's not looking good for the Buffalo Sabres to make a playoff spot. And it definitely seems that they're probably going to miss the playoffs. So guys who are on expiring contracts like a Victor Olofsson, for example, would be a guy who possibly could get moved. Eric Comrie is like a good solid third stringer for a couple of NHL teams. And another guy would be Erik Johnson. Johnson signed a 1-year deal for the Buffalo Sabres after playing a long-term period of time with the Colorado Avalanche. And even though he's a good veteran, there's a lot of people who do think he could get moved by a deadline. He's a solid third pair defenseman. He's not what he once was, but he's definitely a really good third pair defenseman. He can play on like a team's third pair, be like a sixth defenseman, and could definitely help a team. He's got a lot of experience. He's a good player in the locker room. He will be a fantastic addition for a lot of NHL teams. So even though it's completely up to Erik Johnson, given the fact that he's more of an older veteran and the Sabres have to work out something and be okay with him trading him, I think there's a very likely possibility that Erik Johnson could be a guy who ends up getting moved by Buffalo Sabres. So he's a really good, like we said, third pair defenseman, and is a sort of guy that has experience in the playoffs. That'll be a major addition for some NHL teams going into the playoffs, and on top of that, he has playoff experience, so he'll be a fantastic addition for playoff teams. So it's going to be an interesting situation with Chauffeur. No guarantee that Erik Johnson does get moved, but Elliot Friedman does think that there's been a lot of talk over the past little while that Erik Johnson could easily get moved. So it'll be an interesting situation to watch out for there. He was also talking about Sean Monahan and how there's a very likely possibility that he could wind up getting moved in the not too distant future. But it was also mentioned in the Vancouver Canucks saying that he doesn't think that they will be a huge player for Monahan, given the fact that they're looking for more of a second line center. He said if they keep the Lotto line together and Bether, Miller, Pettersson, they're looking for someone to go behind those three on the second line and sort of center the second line. So that's why he thinks that he linked 3 players there. He doesn't know that they've been linked to Gensel, but he thinks that they do have some interest in Elias Lindholm and Adam Henrique. Henrique's a really good, solid second line center. Can definitely work out well. Lindholm's definitely a really good, solid second line center. Lindholm's more of a second line center at this point in time than Henrique is, but Henrique can be a very good veteran addition there for the Vancouver Canucks. So it'll be interesting to see exactly who they possibly go after. You know, they've also been linked to a guy like Joel Eriksson-Ek, who is from Minnesota, who could possibly get moved, but I don't think it'll be an overly locked-in move that the Wild will be willing to move Eriksson-Ek. He's been a really fantastic player there for Minnesota. So it seems that the Canucks are looking for a top 6 forward. They may also be looking for specifically a second line center. So it will be an interesting situation to watch out for. But we know they've been linked to Gensel, but Elliot Friedman does mention players like Lindholm and Henrique as the Canucks are possibly targeting more than a guy like Sean Monahan, given the fact they want to try and add like a second line center. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. But Henrique's a very good veteran. I could definitely see him acquire him. He's probably going to come at a cheaper cap it than a guy like Elias Lindholm. So I could definitely see the Canucks try and add him. Lindholm, like we said before, really good second line center, could definitely work out really well in Vancouver. So he could be also a really good addition there for the Canucks. So lots of interesting stuff there. I've also seen a couple of reports recently linking the Dallas Stars to a Philadelphia Flyers Sean Walker. Now I actually talked about this over the Christmas break. I did a couple of pre-recorded videos. One of them was 5 mock trades that I could see before the trade deadline, and one of them was Sean Walker to Dallas. I said that Walker could go to Dallas for like a second round pick and Antonio Stranges. I definitely think the Stars could have some interest in a guy like Sean Walker. Walker's a very good top 4 defenseman he showed this year. He can work more on like a third pair defenseman on a cup contending team, and I think the Stars would definitely love to add him. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. Not exactly sure that Dallas will be a team to acquire Walker, because there's been a ton of teams linked to him, like New Jersey, Toronto, Edmonton, New York. I could definitely see have some interest. There's definitely been a couple of teams linked to a guy like Sean Walker, and if the Flyers change some of his salary and bump it down to like a $1.25 million cap hit, there would be a ton of teams interested in that. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. We know the Flyers are probably going to move a couple of pieces at the deadline, especially some of their pending UFAs. It sounds like Walker might be the lone guy out in Philadelphia, and I definitely think that there's a very likely possibility that Walker could wind up getting moved by the Flyers, and the Dallas Stars could definitely be a possible landing spot for him. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. And lastly here, going over to the Columbus Blue Jackets, we got more updates there on the Columbus Blue Jackets about them possibly listening on players. Darren Dreger definitely emphasized the fact that they're just listening on these guys right now. But we know that Merzlikins has asked for a trade. We know that they want to move him. We know that from a couple of insider trading videos ago, it doesn't sound like there's any interest in adding Merzlikins for an NHL team. We know that the Jackets could also look to move a couple of their pending UFAs. Don't have too many of those, but they could move a guy like Jack Roslovic. On top of that, they also have a couple of decent defensemen that have been linked to moving, like Adam Boqvist or Andrew P. Peak. But a couple more guys to be linked to possibly be moved out of Columbus is Patrik Laine and Ivan Provorov. Now, it seems that the Columbus Blue Jackets definitely have a messed up locker room. They're not having a really good season this year. It doesn't seem that there's very much leadership in that room right now for the Columbus Blue Jackets, so definitely, it seems they're trying to shake up some things. Provorov, after being acquired by the Columbus Blue Jackets, has been a fantastic defenseman, probably their second best defenseman behind Zach Werenski consistently. He's put up a lot of points. He's actually looked really, really good. Now, he might not be the best locker room fit for the Columbus Blue Jackets, so that could lead them to moving him. Now, Provorov also has only this year plus next year just over $4.5 million cap hit, so moving Provorov I don't think will be too much of a problem. A team who could definitely use as a top four defenseman, a little bit more of an offensive guy. I think there will be a lot of teams interested in it. He does play on the left side, which is a little bit less valuable than the right side, but still, it could be a very fantastic addition for a couple of teams. And if there was a team out there who would acquire him before a deadline, they could get him for this playoff run plus next year's playoff run. So it'll be an interesting situation to watch out for. But Provorov's definitely had a pretty good season this year in their first year with Columbus, and could see some teams have some interest. Patrik Laine is a completely different story. He signed a 4-year, $8.7 million contract extension a couple of years ago. It has not worked out. He has definitely not been an $8 million player. On top of that, he's got this year plus I think 2 more seasons at an $8.7 million cap hit. It hasn't worked out for Columbus and Laine at this point in time. It just hasn't. They've tried playing him at center. It hasn't worked. And the wing, he's been injured a couple of times too. So it sounds like his name's out there. Now, if he goes to the right situation, I could see him revert back to his 30, possibly even 40 goal form. But he needs to be in the right situation. I don't think that's in Columbus. So I could see the Jackets consider moving him. There was a lot of talk early in the season that maybe Laine and the Jackets could be definitely looking for a fresh start. But if they were to consider moving Laine, it would definitely be a difficult trade to pull off, given the fact that he makes an $8.7 million cap hit. I would have to think that the Jackets will be open to retaining some of their salary and try and reworking his contract. But I definitely think that if Laine could be had and the Jackets will be willing to retain enough to bump his cap hit down to like $6.5–6 million, there would be a ton of teams interested in a guy like Patrik Laine if they could have the opportunity to try and revert him back to his 30–40 goal form. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. No guarantees that Laine or Provorov are removed before a deadline or even at all, but it does sound like those two guys are possibly being moved by Columbus Blue Jackets, and they could be guys who we have to watch out for the next little while. So we know Merzlikins wants out of Columbus. We know Roslovic's a possible trade candidate with him being a pending UFA. We know they've been linked to moving Boqvist or Peak. Add Provorov and Laine to the mix, as the Jackets seem to be looking to make a couple of pretty significant moves before trade deadline to try and restructure their team for the next little while. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. That's all I'm going to talk about for today. What do you think about Columbus Blue Jackets? Will they move Laine? Will they move Provorov? Will they move Roslovic, Merzlikins, one of their other defensemen? Definitely have your guys' thoughts on that. What sort of moves do you think Columbus will make before a deadline? Could the Buffalo Sabres with Erik Johnson? I think it's very likely, given the fact he's in the last year of his deal. Buffalo's probably going to be a selling team. Definitely be interesting to see where he could go, but I think he could definitely be a solid right shot defenseman, third pair defenseman for a team's playoff run, so definitely that'll be an interesting situation to watch out for. Who do the Canucks add? Is it Henrique? Is it Monahan? Is it Lindholm? I could definitely see him add a couple of decent players, so it'll be interesting to see who they wind up adding. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. On top of that, does Walker go to a team like the Dallas Stars? Could he go somewhere else? I definitely think it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. I think Walker does get moved by Philadelphia Flyers. Where he goes will be interesting to watch out for, but it seems like Dallas is another team who could have some interest in a guy like Sean Walker, so we'll have to wait and see if he goes there. And what do you think about the Utah updates, the World Junior updates, and on top of that, the waiver updates, the injury updates, and the 4 signings we've had over the past couple of days? Definitely love to hear your thoughts on all that down in the comment section below. But that's all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video, and if you're really to subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support, and I'm able to do with all of you guys. Don't forget to subscribe so we can hit 250 subscribers, and also leave a comment down in the comment section below discussing all that we talked about here today in this video. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so if you check that out, I'll leave a link to that in the description below, and I can't wait to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.